Welcome to another Roundtable. I'm State Representative Dan Caulkins, and joining me this week are Representatives Blaine Wilhour, Adam Niemerg, Brad Halbrook, and Chris Miller. Our spring legislative session is coming to a close, and we're still not dealing with the real issues. Democrats continue to take us down a disastrous path, and we must change course. So how do we do that is our topic today. Let's jump right in with our biggest challenge, restoring economic sanity. Illinois has real problems, and the majority party is not serious about the kind of reforms needed to bring Illinois back from the abyss. So, Blaine, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen this week just really exposes the problems that we deal with here in Illinois politics. People don't really want to deal with the real issues. They want to do this smoke and mirrors stuff, the gimmick stuff, to make the voters, the citizens of Illinois, try to make them believe that they're actually dealing with the issues, actually doing stuff to their benefit, but they're really not. You know, I was reminded of Winston Churchill once said that there is nothing that the government can give you that they haven't already taken from you before. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. You're seeing a lot of temporary small handouts. You know, they're doing $100 here, a couple $100 here. You know, meanwhile, the $100 doesn't even give me the ability to fill my tank up with gas anymore. So we're sitting here in a high inflation economy. We're about to pass the largest budget that the state of Illinois has ever done. $46 billion is being put out there, and you know these revenues that they're talking about, they're being gained on the backs of working people. You know, the big reason that the revenue is so high is because the cost of goods is so high. The cost of fuel, the cost of groceries, the cost of everything that we need in our essential life is higher. So that's what we're dealing with here. You know, if we really want to fix this stuff, we got to do the real structural reforms. You know, we got to put some spending caps on the legislature. We got to fix our pension problems, and these are things that are just being avoided, and you know, the taxpayers in the state of Illinois are going to continue to pay for it. So we're advocating for real reform, tough choices. You know, but when you make tough choices in the state of Illinois, you're going to come up against some pretty powerful special interests, and the powerful special interests are pretty much the benefactors for most of the politicians in Springfield. Until we solve that problem, we're going to continue to struggle budgetarily.
And that really is one of the biggest issues that we're facing. We have special interest groups that have their claws in, so to speak, into you know, what we're really trying to achieve here. Another area where we desperately need to change course is public safety. We've talked about this before. The changes that were signed into law have actually made communities across Illinois less safe.
Dan, you're exactly right. What we're talking about was the Safety Act that the Democrats passed in the wee hours of lame duck back in January of 2021. And what we're seeing is carjacking, muggings, homicides of all kinds. The crime rates are skyrocketing in Illinois, much higher than across our nation. We just have a climate that has empowered criminals to do whatever they want to do, and there's no fear of being punished. This week, the House Democrats called a series of new crime bills to kind of distract from the damaging Safety Act that they passed last year over the objections of the law enforcement groups, victim rights groups, public safety experts supporting law enforcement only when it was politically convenient. It's just a grave disservice to all the Illinoisans. Simply put, we need to make crime illegal again. We need to start by completely repealing the disastrous Safety Act. And we've got several bills to do just that. In addition, all of us here today have co-sponsored onto a House bill, Dan, that you brought forward, House Bill 4191, that will ensure our police departments receive the funding, the resources, everything they need to do their jobs with.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch all these House resolutions and bills come about with no funding, and yet they can bring a bill to the floor that has funding attached to it, but they actually refused to attach funding to all of these bills, subject to appropriation. And you would think if they were really serious about solving these issues, they would have guaranteed that our local police departments would have gotten money for cameras, would have gotten money for training, would have gotten the money, guaranteed that. And none of those bills did that. So here's where we need to go. We have families that are leaving Illinois every day. And what they're telling us is that one of the biggest concerns that they have is in the education system. So they're concerned about the things that are happening in our government school system. In recent years, Democrats have passed legislation that takes classroom time away from teaching fundamentals, and they instead focus on instruction that is really a very specific social agenda. Instead of indoctrinating our children with far-left socialist ideas, we should be preparing them for the real world.
That's right, Dan. I tell you, folks, when we look at what's happened over the last few years, and we look at why soccer moms are leaving, we look at why there's a depletion of folks here in Southern Illinois, and it comes down to our public school system. It comes down to crime in the streets. It comes down to high property taxes, and ultimately it comes down to what's going on in our school system. So SB 818 was passed last year. It allows the ISBE to develop sex ed standards, and folks, we've seen that it's perfectly normal, Buck, right? We've seen the atrocious, you alluded to the indoctrination in our schools, Dan.
True.
But what we're looking at is that bill. ISBE is going to be drafting that language, and they're going to have that language done by August. So we're going to be watching that, folks, to make sure that we're really keeping the ISBE, Illinois State Board of Education, accountable on that particular issue. And you look at other states like Florida, who are getting it right on parental rights, because that's been a big issue, folks. Parental rights needs to be front and center coming into these midterm elections. So with Florida getting it right, with Illinois going in the wrong direction, we need to really put our best foot forward for the parents. And really, when you look at what's going on in schools, folks, we need to be talking about the kids, the children, not the administrators, not the teachers' unions. What's best for the kids? And right now, the climate in the state of Illinois is going in the wrong direction.
And that's a real issue, I think, that we really need to be focused on. The money should follow the children.
That's right.
And that is something that we really need to do. Well, another issue that we're faced with is, and folks, you know it, everybody talks about it. So, all the political corruption jokes that we hear begin with Illinois. Some would say that Illinois is broken, but you know what I say? Illinois is fixed. That is, the fix is in.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Dan. So last year there was an ethics bill that was passed, so-called ethics reform, right? But there was 5 votes against it. But the floor debate was kind of railed about how terrible it was, and so there was only 5 votes that voted against it. The debate is always, well, we have to start somewhere, right? We have to start somewhere. This is a good first shot at it. But the problem is they never come back to pick it up and do the real meaningful reform. This legislation weakened the office of the Legislator Inspector General, so much so that the person that occupied that office resigned shortly after this bill was passed and signed.
I know this is one of the issues that actually impacts all others that we've discussed today. And when elected officials aren't held accountable, which is typical here in Springfield, it's the taxpayers, the middle class, the hardworking people of Illinois that actually suffer from these things.
And there are reforms, Chris. I mean, we've introduced reforms. So one of them is House Bill 2842, and Blaine, that's for the Inspector General. We want to get the Inspector General back involved.
Yeah, there's no use to have a legislative Inspector General if they aren't empowered to do their job. The last LIG resigned, calling the office a paper tiger, because we basically appoint that position, and then we give them no powers of subpoena, no powers to open up a case without getting permission from the very legislative body that they're investigating. That's completely ridiculous. And Brad alluded to it earlier. We did vote against this watered down ethics bill last fall, because this is a very important issue. Until we restore credibility to the State House, we're not going to be able to do the big things that we're talking about doing. And we firmly believe that there's no room for compromise when it comes to requiring ethical behavior from elected officials. I mean, that's it. We got to get the basics right on this stuff. And there's no reason why we didn't do that. We knew it needed to be done. It's just the people in that legislative body either didn't have the will, didn't have the courage, or they were too bought and paid for to actually do it. And it's a problem.
It is. Yep. We've got a real workable plan to begin fixing what is broken in this state. We've got to start revitalizing our economy, restoring public safety. We talked about the education factors. We've got to do this to restore our communities, to restore our state, and to restore our national reputation.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it a million times. We know what needs to be done. We just need to make sure that we have the right kind of leaders in Springfield that aren't going to compromise, aren't going to be bought by the special interests, and are going to really do what the taxpayers need to be done in Illinois. We have everything that we need in this state to be successful. We're just burdened by generations of poor public policy from elected officials that have for too long looked after their own interest more than they have the people's interest.
Right.
That's right, Blaine. And you alluded to the fact, talking about inflationary revenues coming in with this budget. Folks, it's going to be a serious issue when revenues go down, stagflation kicks in, and all these continued appropriations have to be funded. The people of Illinois have suffered enough. They've gone through these mitigation standards. They've gone through all these lockdowns. They're the ones that have been paying the price. And we're going to look at appropriations next year. The only way they're going to be able to fund that is through a tax increase.
That's right. And that's really the issue that we're facing this week. And that is a massive budget, a huge spending. I mean, that they're fighting over how they spend the money that we really should be using to pay our debts and not starting new programs. Well, thank you all for joining us. Now, we all know what we need to do. We need leaders with the courage to stand up and take these issues head on. So until next time, thanks for joining us.